Good morning, everyone. Today we are covering the wild world of ADHD school accommodations for your kiddo. That can look like a 504 plan or an IEP, and today we're going to cover all the workings. So while I get this stream pulled up, I want you guys to tell me in the chat if you have a 504 or IEP, or if you are in the process of learning all about this. And today's workshop is not a one off by chance. We are about 8 weeks into school, into the year, and I am betting that some of you are learning that your child might have ADHD, or you are learning that the accommodations that you currently have is not working so well for you guys. So, for that, it looks like for us, my son has a 504 plan. But we thought that third grade was going to be the hardest year. Third grade starts into grade testing assessments and all of those. And I thought, third grade was going to be our most challenging year yet. Well, surprise, surprise, here comes fourth grade to kick our butts. So let's get into the topic today, and I actually have a really cool for you guys. It's the complete list of ADHD school accommodations in the 504 plan or in the IEP. So by the end of today's workshop video, you will be walking into school confident, feeling like a total boss, and armed with the knowledge that you need to secure the support your child desperately needs. So grab a notebook and let's get started. So, where did these plans even come from? They are both relatively new-ish, but they've been around about 50 years. The 504 plan comes from Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, one of the first federal laws to protect individuals with disabilities. And yes, ADHD counts. And basically, a 504 plan is we are removing the barriers to level the playing field. An IEP is an individualized education program, and that was born from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, total mouthful, passed in 1975. And this changed the game by making sure that children with disabilities, yes, ADHD qualifies, were entitled to a free and appropriate public education. It mandated that schools had to provide not just access, but services that meet the individual needs. One of my coaches described it to me as the 504 plan is the jacket, toboggan, and warm gloves, and the IEP is the whole wrap, the whole jumpsuit, the whole works. But what that means is both of these plans are rooted in laws designed to protect you and your child's needs to a fair education. And I just want to say this means that you have so much more power than you think you do. So, what's the difference between these two plans? Let's start with the 504. The 504, to get eligibility, a 504 plan covers students with disabilities that impacts a major life activity, which can be as broad as concentrating, learning, or social interactions. ADHD qualifies, but it must substantially limit one or more of these activities. For my son to be qualified and eligible, he had a 15-minute observation period by each part of the team. He was off task like 70% of the time. His concentration focus was severely hindered. So that is what put us in the game. What it provides. The 504's main focus is on accommodations. These are adjustments that allow your child to succeed in the general classroom, like extra test time, seating preferences further away so that they can get their wiggles out, or up close so that we can be full on focus, or assistive technology. Who sees this plan? The general education teachers, counselors, administrators usually handle a 504 plan. It is a team approach, but without the need for a formal special education service. Here's the big one, the IEP, the complete, I think it's called a BRCA. Somebody double check me on that. Eligibility. An IEP is for students who qualify for special education services under one of the 13 disability categories covered by IDEA. ADHD is included under the other health impairment category. To qualify, your child's ADHD must impact their ability to succeed in the general curriculum. What does it provide? An IEP provides accommodations and modifications. That means not only do they get the extra tools to help them succeed in the regular classroom, but their curriculum can be adjusted and changed to fit for their unique learning needs. They may get additional support from specialists like speech or occupational therapists, and the IEP includes specific measurable goals for them to work toward. Who oversees it? IEPs are developed and overseen by a multidisciplinary team that includes teachers, specialists, administrators, and you, the parent. This is a legally binding document, and the school is required to follow it to the letter. Now, let's get into a breakdown of the legal protections that I was speaking about. The 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, is a civil rights law. Its purpose is to ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to education. It's all about, like I said, removing the barriers to level the playing field. The law doesn't require special education services, but does mandate reasonable accommodations that allow students to learn and participate in the general classroom. The Individuals with Disability Education Act is a federal law that provides funding to schools in exchange for providing special education services to eligible students. This law is much more detailed and structured than the 504, ensuring that kids get not just access, but individualized education that fits their specific needs. Both laws are there to support your child, but IDEA comes with more safeguards and accountabilities. Schools cannot just wing it with IEPs. There are strict rules and deadlines that they have to follow. And if you have been in this space for any amount of time, you have probably heard parents say, go for the IEP. Totally agree. Because it is so much more structured and it's not just like a fly by the seat of your pants kind of deal. The 504 plan is a great plan if your child has mild to moderate ADHD or mild to moderate struggles in the classroom. But anything above that, go for it. So let's get some stats. Here's a peek at the numbers so that you can see where ADHD kids lands in the world of school accommodations. According to the CDC, roughly 6.1 million children in the US are diagnosed with ADHD. So many more undiagnosed, right? Of these children, about 40% qualify for an IEP, while around 12% have a 504. So roughly 52% of most school-age children have some type of accommodations. IDEA, which covers the IEP, serves 7 million children overall in the US, and ADHD is one of the fastest growing categories within that group. What does this mean for you? ADHD is definitely recognized as a qualifying condition, but there are levels of support, and that depends on your child's specific needs. The good news, you've got options. Whether you're leaning towards the 504 or the IEP, will get you covered. So how does this process work? Now that you know what the plans do, you're probably thinking, great, how do I get one? Here's the roadmap for both. Let's start with the 504. Request and evaluation. You can submit a formal request to your child's school for the 504 evaluation. They'll check if your child's ADHD is substantially limiting a major life function, learning, or concentrating. The 504 meeting, if you're eligible, is the school will hold a meeting to develop a plan. You'll work with teachers and administrators to create a list of accommodations tailored specifically to your child's needs. Review and implement. Once approved, the 504 plan is put into action, and your child's teachers are responsible for implementing it. And this is where you need to advocate for your child, because last year in our third grade year, my son's teacher went out for maternity leave, and he ended up having a long-term sub, which was amazing because there wasn't a whole lot of turnover there. But when the changeover happened for the long-term sub to come in for 3 to 4 months, she wasn't given any of these specifications or the 504 plan. So that was my job as his advocate and his loving mother to come in and say, hey, were you aware of the 504 plan? Can we go over to make sure that you know everything that is happening? How do you get an IEP? Same format. You request an evaluation. You can write a formal request to your child's school so that your child can be evaluated for special education services. This triggers a timeline where the school has 60 days to complete the evaluation. The evaluation will assess your child's strengths and needs through various assessments, academic, behavioral, and so on. And you may need to provide documentation from your child's doctor or specialist. The IEP meeting, if your child qualifies, you'll attend an IEP meeting with a team that that includes teachers, specialists, and again, you. Together, you'll create an individualized plan that outlines the services, goals, and accommodations for your kiddo. Annual review and progress reports. The IEP is reviewed every year to ensure that it is still working and that no adjustments needs to be made, and schools are required to track this progress and adjust the plan as needed. I am not sure if this is a broad circumstance, but my son's school actually does an annual 504 meeting as well so that we can adjust and reassess where needed. And just a second on the formal letter, I was not aware of any of that. In my son's third grade year, I seen that he was struggling, and I reached out and asked my son's principal how we could go about getting him some accommodations. And she said, you would write a letter in requesting the evaluation. So when I tell you notebook and pen, I literally scribbled out a note and said, hi, my name is Danielle Kelly. I am da-da-da's mom, and I would like to have him evaluated for dyslexia, which is what I thought he had at the time because reading was such a challenge. Turns out that triggered a whole series of events that led us down the path to find out it was actually ADHD and not a learning disability. So all of that happened, but that came from literally me scribbling it down on a notebook paper. So don't overthink this. We just need to take action. What accommodations are possible? So here is a quick list. I'm going to see if I can switch over to the other list for you guys, because that list is helpful, but this list will show you that, girl, we in there. Let's make sure it's showing up for you guys. Okay. So there is classroom environment accommodations, instructional accommodations, assessment and testing accommodations, which are huge, homework and assignment accommodations, behavioral and social accommodations, organizational accommodations. Let's be real, that's one of our executive functions that is hijacked. Technology accommodations, collaboration and support accommodations, physical accommodations to get our wiggles out. So that is the complete rundown of the list. And if you would like that emailed to you, let me know in the comments and I can definitely get that over to you. But I wanted you guys to see that you have options. You have so many options to help your child succeed. It is not a one and done process. And like I said, from one year to the next, you may find that something that was working no more. So let's go ahead and get that replaced by something that is. Okay, so you've seen on that list, we had preferential seating, extended time on test, access to fidgets because we need to get our wiggles out. Sometimes when our fingers are busy, our mind can drop into this moment. Movement breaks. During testing, they literally let my son run the hallways. Quiet testing environment, distraction-free zones can be a game changer. IEP services and accommodations. Modified assignments, tasks may be shortened or simplified. I recently learned of one parent who actually has assignments that they do at home. Special education services, one-on-one instruction, or small group sessions in areas where your child struggles, speech or language therapy, behavioral goals, and supportive technology, such as it says speech to text program. When my son takes the math assessments, he has a read to me button where he can make sure he's actually understanding the problem that is being asked. Total game changer. Sample accommodations by age group. I'm sure you can imagine that high school students will need much more varied accommodations than our elementary school age kids, but it's good to know that this can grow and adjust with them throughout the entirety of their school. So elementary school, we use picture schedules for routines. That is super helpful. Frequent check-ins with teachers, the buddy system for things like transitioning between activities, sticker charts or reward systems for on-task behavior. Middle school, longer assignment deadlines, color-coded notebooks for organization, daily agenda checks by a teacher or an aide, permission to use technology for note-taking. Total game changer. High school, assignment accommodations, less written work and more verbal presentation. That sounds terrifying to me, but I'm sure that could work for some. Extended deadlines for large projects, permission to leave class to reset during stressful moments would be so helpful for high school students. And regular meeting with the school counselor to check in on their emotional well-being, because let's face it, high school today is not what it was 20 years ago for me. Getting you ready for the meeting. Now you're ready to walk into this meeting, and by the end of this, hopefully you will feel super prepared. So what are you going to do to get set? You're going to document everything. Start keeping records of any concerns and struggles and note-taking or notes from specialists or doctors right now. In fact, if I were you, I would take a 30-day journal notebook and write any struggles that you see for your child. And if you have a teacher who is willing to participate in this as well, that would be so helpful if they could write down some struggles that they see as well. Be specific. Do not just say my child needs help with focus. Get super specific. Is it organization? Is it impulse control? Bring examples to the table of what you are requesting. Do not be afraid to speak up. You are your child's biggest advocate, and if something isn't working, say it. If you don't understand a term, ask them to break it down in parent speak. Do not be afraid to say what you mean and mean what you say. If you are in a room with all of these educators or specialists and they are throwing around verbiage that does not make sense to you, you cannot advocate for your child if you don't know what it means. So do not be afraid to speak up and ask questions. And follow up. After this meeting, follow up in an email thanking them, of course, for their time and confirming what was discussed. This creates a paper trail to ensure that everyone is on the same page. Back to don't be afraid to speak up and be an advocate. When my child was diagnosed with ADHD, I had a wonderful, decades-long ADHD specialist tell me it was now my job to advocate for my child's education, because if not, he would fall through the cracks. And as my child's principal can tell you, your girl has been doing that every single year for the last 3 or 4 years. So if I can show up regularly and get on these people's nerves, my friend, so can you. So let's recap. IEP versus 504. Here is a quick summary to help you keep it straight. 504 is accommodations. We're not changing the curriculum. We are focusing on leveling the playing field for our child. IEP accommodations. IEP is accommodations, modification, and some services. It is much more structured and legally enforceable plan with clear goals and specialized support. Both plans are meant to support your child, but it's up to you to decide which best fits their needs. And guess what? If it's not working, you can change it. Homework time. I know you guys didn't sign up for that, but here we are. It's time for you to be a proactive advocate. So here's your action plan to dive deeper. You are going to download the Ultimate IEP and 504 Prep Checklist. There are literally dozens on the internet. I don't care which one you pick, find one that you like, and let's walk through that. This will walk you through how to prepare for the evaluation and the meeting and the questions that you can or should ask. Listening assignment, because we're all busy parents and we're all living in chaos. Check out understood.org's podcast on ADHD accommodations. In schools, for more tips on what you can request and for advocating for your child. Lastly, schedule a follow-up. Set a date with your school, with your child's school, to get the ball rolling on the 504 or IEP evaluation, if you haven't already. If you're in the middle of the process, follow up with questions, concerns, as soon as you get done with today's session. If you want that complete list of school accommodations, drop your email in the chat and I will send that over to you. It is super helpful. And you don't need all of them, right? You're going to go through that and you're going to see what you do need and what you don't. You can try some things out. Some things work, some things don't. We adjust my sons regularly. If you have reached the end of this and you are like, this is helpful, I need more of this, or if you have reached the end of this workshop and you were like, girl, I don't know how to start. I consider myself a pretty wise individual. Your girl can figure some things out. ADHD parenting is not one of those, straight up. So if you want to join my ADHD parenting group, feel free to do that. The link is in my bio or in the description. And if you were like, I'd rather just have you handhold me and walk me through the process, play around on my website until you get to the Work With Me tab and schedule your free consultation so we can get you back on track. No judgment. This stuff is challenging and we all need help. Let me check the chat really quickly to see if we have any questions. What would it take to go from one to the other? Timely question. So my son currently has the 504 plan. I believe he needs the IEP. I actually met with his principal last week to decide that or to discuss that. And she said that all I would do is the same format. I would write in a letter saying that, maybe not on notebook paper this time. I would send in a note or an email or a letter and say, my son is currently on the 504 plan. I would like to have him evaluated for the IEP to see if we qualify. Pretty simple. You guys got this. You're going to rock this. I can feel it. If you want the school accommodations checklist, or if you want the accommodations list, or if you have any questions, period, you can reach me at Danielle@themeditatedmama.com. You guys go kick today's butt.